We are
Okay, let's
recording
just
now.
pretend that the last 2 hours doesn't exist.
Holy cow, that's been
It's been I think it's been an hour and a half.
just an hour and a half still.
Yeah, okay. Technical difficulties gone. I guess we should just begin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We are Club Book Buzz. Welcome to our, what month is it?
You know what?
May.
Who knows? Who knows anymore?
Welcome
May.
to our May book club meeting. So Club Book Buzz is just a club where we meet at the last Saturday of every month to discuss the book that we read that month, which we've already posted. So you can already check our Instagram and find out what next month's is. And we'll remind you at the end of this session.
Yeah.
I'm Christine. A little bit about myself, other than I love reading, which is why I'm here, is that I really love to be active and doing things. So I like to go camping, hiking, and I kind of also really like more creative things, such as making cards, trying to get back into painting, those kind of things.
Fun. Yeah, painting is awesome. I love painting. I haven't done it in a while. But hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline, and I also love reading, which is why I'm excited that we're doing this. I am also very active. I love to hike, and I love going biking. And yeah, that's just a little bit about myself. So I guess jumping right into what book we're doing for this month, which is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Right here.
Yes, I don't
Beautiful
actually
cover.
own a copy. I know, it's beautiful. I love it. I love that color of pink too.
And the fact that it's a feather is fun, and I think kind of fits very well with the story. So we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I was thinking we were gonna see parts of the costumes to have like those bright pink feathers, but I don't know if I ever.
There was still one fuchsia
Okay.
costume, but it didn't have feathers.
You think it should?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess this was the book that I put on our list for our pick for May.
So just in case you didn't know how we are picking our books, is that we have a list that we put together, and then we are just drawing one, and hopefully not next month because we've already picked next month, but the month after, you guys can actually help us pick by voting.
Yeah, we're just starting with that for now. We're just kind of putting each 3 of our own picks and then kind of picking from a hat. So I picked City of Girls because I'm a fan of Elizabeth Gilbert. I have read 2 of her other books. Well, I tried reading Eat, Pray, Love. I love the movie, but I read her book Big Magic, which is a nonfiction book. It's all about creativity and how to live a creative lifestyle, which I think is a really cool topic. And I just like her perspectives on things.
Good wisdom.
Yeah, she's a very insightful person. So I've never read any of her fiction. And so when this book came out last year in the summer, I was like, I'm going to read that. And then I never did. I also had it recommended to me by my friend Valerie. And so there seems to be a lot of people who really like this book. And it's a historical fiction. I like period pieces. So I thought it would be something I would really enjoy. So that's why I put it on our list for this month. Yeah.
I had not ever heard of it, so it's not something I normally read, but that's kind of why we started this club, is to try new books and expand our horizons.
Exactly. I think I'm actually guilty of not finishing a lot of books. And I realized that when I was kind of starting to think about this book club, I was like, going through my Goodreads and to start kind of getting my recommendations maybe for book picks. And I'm like, in 2019, I read so little books. I didn't finish so many of them. So this is going to be a good exercise for me to really actually finish books. Yeah. I guess we could get into overall
like a summary of the book.
Oh yes, yeah. So the book is
if you did not finish or did not read it, because
or if you're interested in reading it. So the synopsis of the book is We follow the entire life of this character named Vivian Morris. She's basically writing a letter to a woman named Angela of the story of her life, or basically what Angela's father meant to Vivian. So we start right at the beginning when Vivian moves to New York when she's 19 years old. Her aunt Peg runs this Lily Playhouse. It's kind of like a rundown theater that they put on plays for their community that they basically put on shows that aren't of the like Broadway quality. It's basically what the working class can afford. Yeah, but we kind of get introduced to the world of the 1940s. And what's interesting is I was under the impression that women in those times, I don't know, I was under the impression that going out and getting drunk and going to nightclubs, and all of this stuff seemed more taboo in my mind. And to realize that, of course, the stuff was happening back in the day was kind of really interesting to read about. And
Still taboo, though.
Still taboo. But the fact that these characters are all in that kind of lifestyle, it's not really what I've seen in either books or movies a lot. In that era, especially because World War II is kind of in that, it's kind of what's focused on in that era. But yeah, that's kind of just a quick synopsis of the book. We are just introduced to New York in the 1940s, and Vivian is trying to grow up during this time and living in the Lily Playhouse with her aunt and this cast of characters, and she has to kind of grapple with some of her own mistakes and learning about consequences. Yeah. That's kind of like a non-spoilery kind of synopsis.
And an idiot. That's when it starts.
Yep.
And she calls herself. Very true. I look back at 19 and I also am like, oh, can't believe I thought those things.
I know, right? Things. It's such a weird age. I'm definitely not who I was when I was 18.
Yeah, you definitely grow up just like Vivian does in this book.
Yeah. Okay. So what were like your overall, I guess we could just, your overall thoughts for this book?
I thought there was some very good like pieces of advice and lines in it, and just like this reminder to really live in the present and go after what makes you happy, and just how happiness is different for everyone, because sometimes I know I get caught up in that. So like this character is very much in the city and loves the city, and that would be my nightmare. I want to go live in a little hut in the woods and not see people. So just this very different character from me. I had a lot of difficulties identifying with her, and it took me a really long time to even be interested in the book. It felt like not much happened. Like nothing really had happened for the first entire half of the book.
I see that, yeah.
And then it wasn't until later on that some of the pieces really started to tie together, or it was kind of when she grew up and actually could look back and reflect. That's more of the pieces that I connected with. It was just very long for me, and it didn't have tons of action, which is the style that I normally prefer. And just really long descriptions that I personally was not a fan of, like going into detail about what the Lily Playhouse looked like, or what all these people were wearing, which is very important to the character, but just made it difficult for me to truly kind of get into the character and identify with Vivian, because she's not like me at all.
I think we're on the same page there. And you put it really well, where I wasn't sure why exactly I wasn't getting into it in the first 9 chapters or so. I thought, maybe I thought part of it was, we started this book when we were still in lockdown, which I was like, I felt like that was affecting my reading. But there was a lot of exposition, because the way this book is being told, she's writing it to somebody. So we're not like in the story, or there wasn't a lot of dialogue I found at the beginning. It's almost like you're being told from the past.
Yeah,
Does
and
that make
she's
sense?
really setting the scene a lot,
Yes.
which I don't necessarily like that. I like to have the feeling of the scene and
Yes.
maybe the one or two details, but there was just so much of it, and I'm like, I want my own imagination, or like,
Yes.
this is just me reading words that don't mean anything to me.
Yeah. So it could have been like, the book could have started off that way where she's like, oh, and I'm going to tell you about the story of my life kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it jumps into more present tense,
Yeah.
where it's just everything's playing out instead of it being told to us. It's kind of that saying where it's like kind of show don't tell. I felt like I was being told a lot of information for the first chunk.
For sure.
But I definitely, just like I said, I feel like I'm on the same page with you, not really identifying personally with Vivian. So I felt like I had to kind of come at this from a very objective view. I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to read this story and see where it goes, and see, just, I guess, from the outside, what this story is trying to say. In terms of like what I would rate it, I think there's like two different rating scales, where the book, I think, is like a 4 out of 5 for writing and character development.
Definitely on character development.
There had to have been a lot of research that went behind this book, in terms of getting everything historically accurate, and there was a lot of almost like slang I had to look up. I was like, is this 1940s slang? So I think the work for this novel had to have been a lot, and 4 to 5 stars. I guess for my enjoyment aspect, it was just a little bit less. I did like 3 out of 5 stars for my rating. I struggled with it more than I wanted to. There were parts of the book I really liked, and then there was others not so much. So I'm kind of like conflicted a little bit.
Yeah. I think for my like writing, I'd be very similar, like the 4 out of 5. It was well written. Yeah. I really enjoyed the aspect, just in what words she chose when she was trying to convey something. So at the beginning, Vivian is very wild and crazy, and very just kind of almost self-centered. I don't quite know, just not aware of others or really considering others. And she acknowledges that. Yeah. She acknowledges that at the end. But just at the beginning, like, she's wild, and there's a lot of words that are chosen to describe things that have to do with kind of this wild nature aspect, like calling her Aunt Peg, being built like a lumberjack, or her paw was in her pocket was one of the lines.
Yeah.
So very well done in that sense.
Yes.
But then, for enjoyment, not my type of book. Hated it until like the last, I'd say, like 8 chapters or so.
Yeah.
When this Frank character comes in the picture, and she's kind of more talking about the emotional side, where I could identify with those feelings and what people had gone through, as opposed to the descriptions.
Right, exactly.
So I would give it like 2 out of 5 stars.
So that's kind of what I was saying, is I just sat back and I was like, I feel like this is the kind of book where you have to be patient. And I could tell that, it's almost about 400 pages, and I wasn't enjoying it 9 chapters in. And I said, I think that this is just one brushstroke of the entire painting. It's like, I feel like I have to just finish the entire thing, because we don't yet know who Angela is. And not until almost towards the end.
Writing the story too.
Yes.
If you have not read it.
If you have not read it, we don't know who she's writing to until towards the very end. And so that kind of kept me intrigued, where I was like, okay, who's she writing to? Who's this person? But like I said, I felt like this was the kind of book I need to see the whole picture first. So I was trying not to judge it too harshly until I got to the end. And
I think that's very true, where it was the first half is really setting the scene for like the last, I think it's like 130 pages. just because I was struggling and texted my friend being like, "This, I don't know if I can finish this." So yeah, it's at the end when you kind of see why the stuff at the beginning had meaning and why she gives those descriptions. It's giving the context that you need.
Yes.
A lot of it.
It's interesting to hear. So I listened to Lululemon's live stream with Elizabeth Gilbert, and I feel like before I had heard her thoughts and comments on why she wrote it, it's sad that I had to like hear it from the author and of why she had to write it and her like the reasons behind why she wanted to have this kind of storyline. And she kind of basically said it's a comment on stories about women where if they made mistakes, then they would either be killed or like their lives were destroyed forever or they were shamed by society. And she was basically just saying that seems really unfair and harsh, and people are more nuanced, and people make mistakes, and it's like, how do we as humans deal with the shame and embarrassment of potentially a mistake that you made in the heat of the moment, and how do you like, are you going to let it destroy your whole life? And it's also kind of other people's comments and perceptions of you as a person. She kind of gets that phrase kind of stamped on her by Frank, who I was not expecting at all to have that character come back.
I expected him to kind of come back, because I'm like, why would she be talking about this one line and this guy? And like, she gave a little more description to him, but I didn't expect him to be the sort of character that he was.
Yeah, like that was completely
honest and very like down to earth and kind of withdrawn. But again, it was that parallel where they both had like this heat of the moment thing that they're trying to recover from.
Yeah. And yeah, it just makes those kinds of situations, it's more nuanced than we realize. We get his whole backstory of why he did it, and he's sitting there trying to justify himself to Vivian, and he's like, I couldn't stop thinking about it all those years, even through the war. And but yeah, other people's perceptions of ourselves and how we kind of get if people say something and how it affects our identity at going forward.
I think that whole kind of play on like how people influence our own perception and how we have to accept ourselves and deal with mistakes. Elizabeth Gilbert does a really good job of making it like it's a real person.
Yeah.
Because she has to deal with those feelings of shame and kind of own up to her mistake. Like you were saying, she doesn't just get killed off or have her life fall apart. No, she keeps going and has to learn to live with it. And then I really liked at the end the whole speech about honor and how you have
field
to
of honor.
Yeah,
it was cool.
It's painful, but that's what growing up is pretty much owning those mistakes and realizing other people make mistakes too. And like once you love someone and like someone, as her Aunt Peg says, you love and like them for like forever, no matter what happens. And I think that's a very good approach to have to life, is acknowledging that people still have to learn and grow and mistakes happen.
For sure. And especially like a mistake that she makes. Like I said, you and I, it's hard to kind of take in these examples and these messages and these pieces of wisdom if you don't really identify with the character. But just coming at it objectively, I have no idea how I would deal with that type of shame that I would feel if I was in her place. And just seeing her get to the end, yeah, that's like the best part about this book. I think that I'm happy that I finished it, was that I have a list of quotes that I really like, and one of them was when Aunt Peg's, no, it's not, is it Aunt Peg or is it Olive?
I think it's Olive, actually.
It's
Who said
Olive,
it,
yeah. About her speech about the field of honor, and basically, do you want to be a child or do you want to be a woman who owns up to her mistakes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think getting to the end made me appreciate the complexity of the book, where if I had quit because I wasn't enjoying it, I wouldn't have appreciated the same way, because now I can appreciate that it was well written and a good book with good lessons, just not as enjoyable for me because that's not necessarily what I always look for in a book.
I mean, I totally think we should be having fun when we read and to not waste any time on a book that you're not enjoying. But that's what's kind of an interesting about this book club and this exercise of getting to the end, is that I was able to try and study this in a way like that I normally wouldn't a book. I probably would have, if I wasn't enjoying it, just moved on to something else.
Yes, and reflecting on a book really makes you appreciate it. Like, I remember in high school, you had to read Catcher in the Rye, or I did at least. And the first time I read it, I was like, this is so silly. Like, I thought it was a silly book, and I just didn't enjoy it. But then, like, we actually talked about it, and we looked at all these, like, examples of symbolism and character development. And now it's one of my favorite books. But my first, like, one read through, I was like, okay, read that, next book.
And it's books like those, especially ones that we have to read in school. I don't think I've ever enjoyed a book that we had to read in school. But then it's kind of
one book I loved.
Yeah.
Monkey Beach.
Monkey Beach. I never read that one.
Don't remember who it's by, but it stuck with me.
But for example, like The Giver. I remember in grade 8 just being like, why are we reading this? Like, I didn't know what was going on. And probably now I should read it again, and I'd probably appreciate it so much more than when I
loved The Giver. That was like my stack of books. That's like in the top 10.
Yeah.
I read it for Battle of the Books.
I gotta read again. I honestly don't remember anything from that book. It's been so long. But I should definitely give it another read.
That one it has, again, it's kind of one of the, I find a lot of the books that don't have that same amount of like plot and action happening are sometimes, once I read through it, the books that I enjoy more, just because there's more like life lessons and actual things to like think about and reflect. There's more meaning behind it, as opposed to someone overcoming a challenge. Like,
right.
I read a lot of fantasy books, so like fighting a dragon, great. There's nothing that's really applicable to my life. Where the City of Girls really makes me think about like, what is happiness to me and how much am I considering other people's opinions?
Yeah. And also the opinions of society and what you should do as a woman. And she starts her own bridal. That's like one of the things I love about her, is the skill that she has. And it carries her. She's good at it, and it carries her through her life, supports her, and she has this passion for it. I loved that aspect. And it's kind of like unconventional in a way. She doesn't get married, she doesn't, have kids, which I can see Elizabeth Gilbert in that. I can kind of, I don't know her personally, but just knowing
this career kind of more driven without actively necessarily being career driven. Proud.
Sorry?
I'd say she's proud.
Yeah.
Proud of her work.
Yeah. So I really liked that aspect of the book. I think I was saying before, I would love to see this as a movie. And I think I would have to fact check this, but somebody told me that I think Warner Brothers bought the rights, and I think it actually might be becoming a movie.
I think that'd be really interesting. And I would love to see like the costumes, because she does describe them so much in detail. And I definitely know now going forward, if I watch a movie and like I'm already, from reading this book, because fashion was such an important part of it, being like, oh, maybe I should put on a nice fitted blazer instead of my t-shirt.
Right? Like, where fashion is different these days. I think a lot of people can just be so much more casual now. But I think the enjoyment of this story would you don't have to read the long descriptions of costumes or try to think about what this playhouse looks like and what the plays are. You could just see it unfold. And like, it's described as being very glamorous, but I don't really know what 1940s showgirls look like. I had to Google some photos because I was I was like trying to imagine it myself. So to see it as a movie, I think would be super interesting. And I was brainstorming. I was like, okay, who would be Billy Buell? Or who would be Vivian and Celia? And I was trying to think of actors. Have you seen the Netflix show Hollywood?
No.
I started like picturing some of the characters as being this cast. And I just think it would be more enjoyable, like the medium in which, like I said, I loved the movie Eat, Pray, Love, but I could not read the book. I don't know what it was about that content being in book form. I just couldn't do it.
If you were to be a character in this book, who would you be?
I don't know. They're all so different from me.
Right? But that's also like, I think,
feel like I would be sort of, I know this is gonna be like, I feel like I have like Olive in me, or I'm a Virgo. I'd be like, what are we doing? Get to bed, everyone. We have to get to work in the morning. Drinking past this.
I feel like I'd be a little bit like that, like liking the structure, worrying about the bottom line. Like, you can't just go hire 6 dancers just because you want them. But I also feel like, and this could just be like more wishful thinking.
Ability, I want to hear.
I would want to be Edna, like this movie star who's just like,
I forgot about her.
Sophisticated. Like, to me, she's very sophisticated, knows what she wants, knows her value, and just really takes enjoyment in other people's enjoyment. Like when they're going through all her clothes and getting excited about like the yellow scarf and that. And I feel like that's something that I always try and do, is like not necessarily be happy because of what I have, but like kind of cultivate that happiness that others have and revel in that. So I would like to be a little bit more like her. And also just the fact that she's like so strong and takes the big mistake that Vivian made kind of in a stride and doesn't really let it deter her.
Yeah, she deals with it in like a dignified way, but also really
harsh.
Brought the hammer down on Vivian.
Which I think Vivian needed, because she really wasn't growing up. That was what it really took, because she looked up to Edna so much.
What's interesting about that situation is you hear the different characters' perspectives about the characters, and you don't actually know who's right. Yeah. So we hear from, what's her husband's name?
Billy.
Arthur?
Oh, Arthur, yeah.
Edna's Arthur.
Yeah.
He's going on like, she's going out with Vivian's boyfriend. I forget his name already. I forget all the side characters' names.
I know.
What was
Anthony
and Arthur. Okay. So he's like, she likes them young. She does this all the time. So you're hearing that from her husband. So you're like, could this be like what this woman does? She's super talented, and
she talks about how she loves them handsome, and we know that this guy is really only handsome. He's got no brains to go with that.
But then she's only taking Arthur's word for it. But then Peg, after it happens, is like, I know Edna, she would never do that. She loves her husband. So we really don't ever get a clear picture of what actually happened or happened. Which I find interesting, because Vivian just takes it for face value.
Which I thought was funny, because like she talks about how lovingly Edna would look at her husband and just stare at him like a doe. One of those descriptions. And like, she must be like after my boyfriend kind of thing immediately. And I don't know if that was the heat of the moment at being called an infant or...
I think that's when we really see the worst of like human behavior when it comes to relationships. People get so jealous and like what that can make you do.
Mm-hmm.
Because Vivian and Edna are close. She's like her assistant, and she looks up to Edna, and
it's her mentor.
Yeah, I just, even the mistake seemed not like what Vivian would do. But then it was like in that moment where I was like, I do not know this character. I thought I knew this character. It just seemed so like not what she would do, but she did it.
It didn't seem that out of the way for me, just because she had been so, like, previously it was very like she just wanted to have sex and have fun and feel better, and this was just like a new way of like an opportunity, might as well take it. So it didn't seem, to me at least, that out of character. A little bit in that it was like her mentor's husband, obviously. And she does mention how she had that doubt and like almost left the hotel room but then went back. So I think that, though, was just more showcasing kind of that childish side where she hadn't grown up yet, though, and thought about what the potential consequences would be. It was just, I want to do this, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, Elizabeth Gilbert wanted to play around with the thought of like a very, very promiscuous character. And I don't know, Celia is in the mix there, though. So I feel like if she had an influence on Vivian, because like, would she just go do this with Arthur by herself?
No.
So
I feel
like Celia's relationship with Vivian, I feel
it's very much, she's looking at her as an idol as much as she says, oh no, we are friends, we're just two pretty girls. Even at the beginning, spending so long talking about how she was literally her idol and glamorous and like a god. Like, she looks up to her and wants to be like her. And I feel like it's almost a toxic relationship where Celia is also very much, it's about me and not considering others, like, oh, yep, I'm going to move in with you and share the bed and just
move right in.
And I don't think that's necessarily a good influence on Vivian. And I think that is very much, though, like, as you grow older, you can recognize those people that don't have the best influence on you or aren't necessarily providing value to your life. They're just there with someone to like hang out with because they're there. Which we see later on when Vivian's like, no, it's more my family, with the characters that she has in that kind of last section of the book.
I'm sorry, for the last like second you were frozen. My internet is
okay. Oh, I was just saying, it is very much, I think, just like more of a toxic relationship where she's very focused on Cecilia, and Cecilia hasn't grown up. So they're both kind of in this attitude of like, what can I get and how does this benefit me? As opposed to, I think when you grow up, you recognize these people that aren't necessarily providing value to you and helping you grow as a person, that they're just there because they can be, or because they have something to offer, like a bed, which I think Vivian recognizes when she's talking more about like when she's starting her business and she has specific friends that sit on the rooftop with her. Like, I couldn't see Celia doing that.
No, I really like what you said right just there. And I think, I don't know if you've experienced that, but maybe, I feel like I've maybe experienced a little bit of that growing up, because you're so, 19, 20, you're still so new to the world. You're meeting so many new people. And you're not like quite aware of yourself yet when you're making friendships and what you're getting out of those friendships. Like, sometimes you might see somebody as Vivian sees Celia. Is it Celia or is it Cecilia?
I don't know. Celia. I don't remember.
I think it's Celia.
Cecilia. I think I read it as Cecilia, but I could also just, I've known Cecilia, so. I will look it up right now. Celia.
Okay.
Yeah, Celia.
I heard you say Cecilia, and I was like, Wait, was I? Did I read
No,
wrong?
no, it's just because I've known Cecilia's and that it rolls off the tongue a little
Oh
easier
yeah.
for me.
Basically, I was just trying to say that, like sometimes, like you were saying, it's a toxic friendship where Vivian's trying to get something from Vivian, or Vivian is trying to get something from Celia. Like you said, she sees her as this glamorous, and she wants to be like her, and she's getting from her life. She brought her into her world. She's bringing her to different nightclubs, introducing her to men, also helping her lose her virginity in the beginning.
What?
Like
That whole thing, I was like, oh, here's something that happened. That was it?
happened.
Like, okay, why did I need to learn that? I still don't understand why that was.
I don't know why. I thought about that, and then I was wondering, I guess it kind of brought in the other girls, like Gladys. Is it Gladys?
Yeah.
Maybe to situate their relationship.
But they weren't relevant, really, I found, at all to the story.
I don't know. Yeah.
But maybe it was just setting the scene that it's not something meaningful to her. It's just like a thing that she does that satisfies her, which is very much the attitude she has for the rest of the book, even until she's in her 80s, 90s.
Yeah. I guess that's where I was going with that.
Yeah. What did you think of the title, City of Girls?
Oh, I love it, actually. It's a good play on, it's the title of the play that they're trying to put on, but also throughout the whole book, it's about New York City and all the different women in Vivian's life and her connections with all these different women. I like the title. I like
the title, and I think it is just related to what you're saying. It's very much not necessarily the girls that we necessarily associate with the 1940s and the typical narratives. It's more these real people that would be kind of behind the scenes. Literally, sometimes they're like right front and center, but not necessarily identifying them as a person. I did expect there to be more about the actual play, City of Girls, within it.
Me too.
But it was just like, oh, this is the play we did. It's called City of Girls. And I kind of want to know what happened in that with like the old spinster and like the gambling ring and falling in love with the mayor.
Yeah.
I would read that book. That seems like my type of book.
That's what I was saying. It would be really good to see it in a movie because I want to see that play out. And you know, Edna, the character, she's supposed to be like this really amazing singer, and when she sings one of the numbers, it's like a showstopper, and it's like, oh, I want to hear it.
See, that's why I want to be her. I want to be a show. I want people to not necessarily recognize me, but not forget about me.
You know the movie? It's a kids movie. It's called Sing.
Yes.
Oh my god, I don't know why. Just Edna. I just picture the old lady in that cartoon movie who owns the theater, and you know that scene at the beginning where she's like belting out this song. I'll have to show it to you later, but that's how like I picture Edna.
Okay, I picture her as Edna from The Incredibles because she has a short black bob, is more petite, and literally has the same name, and is just very like to me, even though she's like sophisticated and just so talented, and but also very straightforward. And we see that especially when she's kind of rebuking Vivian and being harsh. And that just reminds me the same as Edna from The Incredibles. That was who I was picturing. And then I was picturing a little bit later on, though, like Audrey Hepburn.
Oh. Yeah, I started looking up a little bit of 1940s fashion and pictures from that era and people of that era to kind of get a sense of what this all looks like. Because 1940s, World War II, it's very focused. When we look back in history, it's very focused on World War II, but we don't think of other things that happened in that time.
Yeah, the little things,
the little details
that impact people really personally, but don't impact the entire nation.
Yeah.
And I think the book does a good job of really showcasing that, how it's life you don't necessarily know what's going to impact a person. It's this addition of all these little things, like this stranger in a car calling her a dirty whore. And
she
it's
gets
such
branded.
a big thing for her, for both of them, really.
Yep.
But to like an outsider, you look at it and you're like, so someone insulted you. Like it's one thing, kind of.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I was trying to situate myself in that time. I didn't realize, was such promiscuous behavior of women allowed? It seemed.
Is it still
like?
I
I think. I mean,
not nearly as taboo, but sometimes I'm like there's still that judgment that occurs
today, even now in 2020. Yeah, you'd probably get branded the same thing if people knew your private life. If somebody, because this one character Frank is, like he describes, he's literally just driving, he has no idea what's going on, and then he hears Walter just giving it to Vivian about what she did, and I totally just lost my train of thought, but yeah, if somebody
he just copies them, basically. He's like, oh, this is what's happening, I want to be in on it, so here's my contribution.
You're right, though. Have we come any further?
I don't think so. Everyone is still just trying to fit in and making mistakes when they do that and not accepting themselves. So
very true.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. If you have anything else you wanted to say, I just had some notes.
Did you cry while reading this book?
Oh, that's a good question. No.
Okay. I cried a lot of books, so it should not come as a shock that I did cry while reading this book.
Really?
It's not necessarily the parts that you would think, like, because she gets very emotional when she loses Edna as this mentor, and then later when Edna pretends to not know her, and then when I didn't cry at that. I didn't cry when she like lost her boyfriend, or even really like when Walter had died. The part that hit me was when she was so upset about what could have been, the fact that it wasn't that Walter was dead, it was that they didn't have that brotherly sister relationship, and they didn't have the chance to form that, whether or not that would have actually occurred. But I think that's kind of just the loss of the potential and what could have been.
Mm-hmm. I find it, I don't, even if there's a book that's really sad, I don't know if I like physically cry, but I definitely like feel different. Like it takes a lot to get a book to make me to cry. But I totally
for me, but now,
commercial. I want it to make me cry. I want to sob. I need those books that make me sob, but it doesn't mean that I don't feel those moments. I totally agree. Like the moment where she's talking about Walter, it's almost like it hits her in the moment too.
Yeah.
Where she realizes like, I never really knew my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because it's pretty much because Walter shut her out since that happened.
Yeah.
And it's almost because of her decision that he doesn't want anything to do with her.
Which is sad because she's very much now taking that approach of like her Aunt Peg. Once you love someone, you love them flaws and all. Like she still loves Billy. And then like she's trying to extend that courtesy to everyone else. But then it's not extended to her by Walter.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it funny how little we've talked about Peg? I thought Peg would have more of a relationship with Vivian, or more of a role.
Yeah, like more monumental or influencing, but really it's just she had the playhouse and provided the opportunities and allowed Vivian to meet the other characters.
Mm-hmm. And she even apologizes for it at one point. There was when Olive brings her to see that reporter dude.
To try.
His name is Walter as well, Walter Winchell or something.
Yeah.
It's Olive who pretty much stands up for her and make sure that her name is not on that article. That's when things got really interesting for me. I was like, ooh, how is this gonna all crumble? I want to just see everyone crash and burn.
Olive ended up having more of that role, and I think maybe that's because she is like steadfast and very much an anchor to everyone, where Aunt Peg or Peggy or Peg, she switches what she calls her throughout the novel, is very much like flamboyant and just having fun, as well as she like is suffering from alcoholism.
Yeah,
so
that is true. There is that component, and like you would think that this person would be more of like a role model, kind of parental figure, but she's just as complex and with her own issues as well.
I think that was what was really well done in this novel, was that we see pieces of these characters and you know that there's more behind it. They are more complex. And when we're seeing even what you were mentioning before, where we don't know quite what the accurate picture is, with Edna and her young husband. And I think that's a reflection of real life, how we never have a clear, full picture despite what we might think.
Mm-hmm.
Even the city of girls, the fact that the play was a city of girls, I thought that was fun because it's kind of like a reflection of the entire novel, and it's very hard to get a whole picture. It's always bits and pieces.
Question: what do you think Vivian would have turned out like if she had stayed in her hometown with her parents and never went to New York? It's almost like when she goes, she has complete freedom. You know, like Aunt Peg is not really a parental figure. I don't think she's she's not very judgmental of anything. There's no judgment. There's no all that whole layer of everything is taken away. So for a young person to be put into that environment, it's interesting to see where she went with that, or if she'd stayed in her hometown with her parents.
I do like the aspect of having that freedom, but I still think within the freedom you should have a bit more of the role model. Like Aunt Peg could have done better. But as for what she would have kind of turned out like, I don't know. I think she would have just been kind of still, I think she still wouldn't have gotten married, especially because she wouldn't have necessarily had to grow up and deal with her actions, I don't think, at home.
Mm-hmm.
I think she would have just lived at home and kind of been a miserable old spinster who would just, I think she would have done more sewing, and still had a business with that because she is so talented and that does bring her happiness. But I don't think she would be this dynamic person with wisdom, really. She would just be a grumpy old lady who had not lived and experienced. Which it's almost like fine if that's what you wanted, but I think that's why she would have been unhappy.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of moving from a really small town to downtown Toronto. It's like you're just exposed to so much that you're just not used to. Mm-hmm. And if she hadn't been exposed to that way of life, to having Celia as a friend, to witnessing other women's promiscuous behavior and how that like influenced her, it's something that popped in my head. I was like, oh, what if she,
I don't know. Yeah.
How would she have been if she wasn't exposed to that?
I don't think she would have become this promiscuous person, because if you don't see it happening, I don't think that's necessarily something that you would think you could do. Even she mentioned that she didn't know that you could do that.
Yeah. And without many consequences, like Celia was going out, hanging out with men every night and coming home, and there wasn't any consequences. So it was almost like the environment that fostered it as well.
Yeah.
Can I just say I totally called Peg and Olive?
Yeah, I know. I
totally called it.
Like, I don't understand how she didn't see that at the beginning.
Just the way you can tell that she's foreshadowing it in the writing. Just there, she's like, oh, there would be descriptions of their relationship and how Vivian just thinks it's odd that Olive is so involved and always around, and they're just so close.
They're so much a couple. Like,
yeah.
I think that speaks to the time, though.
Yes.
Very well, is that it wasn't even on her radar that could be a possibility. And then
but for you, I like called it from the first second. I'm like, come on, Vivian. But that scene was, she's like creeping up the stairs and she sees them dancing. I thought that was really
cute.
Sweet. Yeah.
It was a cute glimpse into their Did you hear that?
Yes, I heard some hammering or something earlier too.
Okay, but did you hear what was just said?
No, I didn't hear.
Good. Anyway, I think Celia kind of nails it when she's like, well, if it barks like a dog, and that kind of saying,
yeah, like, hello,
where have you been for like the past couple years?
Yeah. So she's really naive sometimes in that way, but also just that non-exposure of, she probably has not seen a same-sex couple in her hometown, and especially at that time, I can't even imagine what that was like in the 1940s.
No. And I mean, like, we can tell obviously that they're a couple, but that's really, I find, only because we have Vivian's perspective when she's living with them and sees all those interactions. I think from any other outsider, it'd be like, no, it's just two women who own a business together. Even their wedding business.
I honestly thought like Vivian and Celia were gonna like end up together.
I thought maybe a little bit too, especially with how much she
describes how beautiful she is
and goes on and on about that all the time.
I'm like, girl, you're crushing.
Yeah, I thought, and even if it wasn't her, I was like, for sure she's going to end up with a girl.
Yeah.
And like realize
that was going, but that's kind of what surprised me about this book, of the way it went, because I thought it was going to go somewhere, and then it subverted where I thought it was going.
Even with like Frank too, as I mentioned before.
Frank thing. I thought that was really interesting. I still don't know how it's interesting how they become friends.
Yeah.
Someone who almost destroyed your self-image.
And who was destroyed about almost destroying your self-image.
Yeah. And then they come together and they walk the city every night. His condition, he had 3rd-degree burns. That was hard to read. That was really sad. Just all those descriptions about his family and his daughter.
How he was called a coward.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Just because a captain was like, oh, you were in the water. And it's like, no, explosions throw people. And like, I don't think you'd be a coward if you were lit on fire and jumped in water anyways to put it out or something. Like,
yeah, that's like something that these two characters have in common, was like these men have labeled they've labeled these men cowards. And so that's like what brings these two characters together, and it just took a complete turn, and I really liked that part. But it was really hard to hear about his life and not being able to go and sit in a cafe or just go have dinner, and he couldn't sleep, and Vivian was really like the only one who will come out and walk with him. Yeah, it was just really sweet.
I thought it was interesting too, and just like how they have those parallels but are so very different, in that she's by that point very confident and like comfortable with herself, and like, this is my life, the world isn't straight, you gotta accept me who I am, like right at the beginning has that whole speech, like, just so you know, I am promiscuous and I'm okay with it. And we see later on,
she owns it,
when he breaks down, that he's not comfortable with being like this soft man who isn't like this big macho warrior type, who didn't thrive in war, and the fact that he has such difficulty accepting that when he even accepts her so willingly. I thought that was just like very kind of interesting that they're still friends despite kind of this battle, and the fact that he hasn't reached that point that she has.
that scene where they're in the car together, I think that would probably be the closest I came to crying, where was that the moment where she was telling her that he was being branded a coward?
He was telling her that, I don't know if she was saying it, but he was saying how like he was in the water, and all the other times when he like kind of froze in fear, and like the one kid accidentally got his head chopped off and he just stood there, and this other guy, the lawyer, dragged him pirate across. But I think the fact that he's talking about this lawyer, and this lawyer, the lawyer like called him a name again, or I think called him a coward.
So the lawyer was one of the soldiers that
had been there,
yeah,
and stayed on the ship, and the fact that he called him twitchy again, and I think
just the complete disregard of anything this human is going through and his pain and suffering.
Yeah,
in that moment, just.
But I think Vivian does a good job of like handling it and being like, you know what, he didn't come out unscathed either. Like, he's probably dealing with stuff, and the fact that he's attacking you means he's probably going through a lot too. And just kind of that's when I'm like, oh, she's definitely an adult now, recognizing that this guy just made a mistake, but like, I'm not gonna fully judge him for it. Like, yes, it was a mistake, but I'm not gonna hate him for the rest of his life, this lawyer, even though she wants to like pound him
for hurting her
friend, but she still recognizes that it's like this human being.
Yeah, she has this perspective now where she doesn't just see someone as like surface level,
she recognizes the complexity.
Yeah. I think maybe that is just what the overarching message of this book is. It's just human beings are messy, we are complex, nobody knows what's going on in here, and our own personal struggles, but also to just not be mindful of what you're saying to other people and how it might affect them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you were to take one lesson from this book to like carry with you the rest of your life, what would you take out of this?
Let me just pull up one of the quotes I like. I have some of them here. It might just take me a second.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many. Like, I'm just scrolling through right now, and
there was a lot of good quotes, even at the beginning, since I started taking notes and then gave up. I really liked at the beginning where she just talked about how she was told, you made it, and how that's really all everyone wants to be told, is that they made it, that they're good, that they're successful. And that's probably what I would take out of it, is that people just want to know that they're okay, that you're okay, and recognizing that, like, yeah, kind of the theme you're mentioning, the complexity of people, but really they just want to know that they're okay and they made it, whatever making it is to them, because they are complex and different. And what she considers success is very different than what I would consider success.
Very true. And that's, I think why we have to, like, everybody's so different. And I would say I'm glad that I finished this novel. And would you recommend this novel to people?
I think I would recommend it to some people, depending on what they read. I could probably convince some people who are more into the action fantasy to read it. But I think unless they were going to have a discussion like this about it, they may not get the same value out of it.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you that while I was still looking. There is one quote and I can't find it because there's literally so many. There's 7 pages or more on Goodreads of just quotes.
It's got a lot of, and I did like that it was like you have this overarching theme and these messages, but there's also like those good kind of one-liners, like, we all want to be whole, you matter, when I was 19 and an idiot. That still stands out to me. And I was like, yes.
Oh, here, I'll just read this one then. Children don't have any honor, you see. They aren't expected to because it's too difficult for them. It's too painful. To become an adult, one must step into the field of honor. Everything will be expected of you now. You will need to be vigilant in your principles. Sacrifices will be demanded, and you will be judged.
Yep, that's the quote by Olive.
Yes. Such a good character. And she was like the least flamboyant of them all.
It's not who you expected to be the strong character and have like, the wisdom and the impact that she does. Which I think is good, though, because like we both kind of identify a little bit with her, right? Mm-hmm. And I find sometimes I beat myself up a little bit over that, where I'm like, nobody's really listening to me, or I'm not like out there on the stage speaking. But then it's kind of like this reminder to yourself, and even this whole story is that the little things have impact, and you can influence someone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's those the messages that I would take from the novel are coming from a character that I most identify with.
Which is kind of why you identify them with, right?
Exactly. At least I'm glad there was one.
Yes.
It made it.
This is not the normal crowd I would be with.
Yeah, like you wouldn't see me going out to nightclubs with these girls.
I'd be sitting in the coffee shop reading or hiking in the backwoods. Avoid not being anywhere near the city.
But maybe I should have more fun. I don't know.
I did get that. The message that like I should have fun and like just be myself and do what I want. I did get that, and it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna and it might not be. I want them.
It might not be necessarily the choices that Vivian wants, but just owning in what you want and figuring out what you want and not being apologetic for it, and just like being the kind of woman you want to be, despite the taboos and what society wants of you.
Be yourself.
Yes,
that is how
be yourself is the overall
happy and satisfied. Be yourself and don't judge people for being themselves.
Yes, don't judge other people. Can we that's what we need to take away from this.
Yes.
Just you do you.
Mm-hmm. Don't judge a book by its cover either.
Oh, there you go.
As it was.
I totally judge every book by its cover.
I do a little bit.
And this cover was beautiful, so I had to pick it up.
But most of the time, though, the covers do reflect the novel, just like your fashion choices can reflect you. Same idea.
Very true. You were saying, you wouldn't be found in the city, that you'd be maybe at a cafe somewhere. One of the quotes in the book is, I found that eating alone in the window in a quiet restaurant is one of life's greatest secret pleasures.
Yep. I haven't quite reached that level of going by myself. I'll go sit in the library by myself.
You won't go to a cafe by yourself?
I've gone a couple times, but just to like eat dinner by myself.
Oh,
it's very different than going to a cafe by myself.
Yeah, a restaurant. It says in the window of a quiet restaurant.
Yeah.
I've never gone to a restaurant by myself.
Restaurant level. I've reached the cafe level.
Yeah.
I prefer to be at home where there's less people. Because I am not. Told you, not a fan of big crowds and lots of people.
Is there anything else I guess we want to say?
No. I'm excited to read our next book.
What's our next book?
Oh, it's my book too.
That's why I want to let you announce it.
I forget it. City of Bronze? Nope, that's not
the City of Brass.
Brass. There we go.
Which is funny. We didn't mean for the titles to be
but I think
similar.
That will be interesting for next month's discussion to like see if there's any parallels or like how they're the same.
That would be cool.
With the city of something.
Well,
girls versus brass.
The main characters are both young women, so there might be some parallels there. They're probably going to be. I have a feeling they're going to be very different, but
I've already started reading it, and I can definitely say that they're
lightning.
They are different, but kind of some of their approaches They're more similar than you think.
Oh, okay.
However, I definitely identify with the new character that we'll meet a bit more.
Okay.
I think that has to do with more, not necessarily the character in the sense of who they are, but more in what they want.
Oh.
So,
All I know that is it's set in 18th century Egypt, and that's all I know.
it's also a bit more on the fantasy side, so it's not necessarily a historical novel, which I think will be interesting then, especially if we read like a fantasy book down the line to see.
Yeah, well, it's
kind of
good to
these changes.
change it up.
Yeah,
Switching it up. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this book.
All I've got at the moment.
I feel like
Once I reflect more,
yeah, I'm sure there's so much more that I can say about this book because there's complex. So many different parts. And even like at the end there, we started talking about Frank for just quickly, but there's so much more, so much depth. I think I would need to, honestly, if we were to do like a really in-depth discussion, I think I'd have to read it again because I only read it once. Yeah. And like I said, it's like 400 pages. So, but I think we did a pretty good job of just covering
the basics. Hopefully
covering the basics and
yeah. So for all of you who are watching, hopefully you found the book and got some value out of it or from this discussion. We would love to know your thoughts. So feel free to let us know. And
we'd love to know your thoughts about like the format and also for kind of engaging with everybody.
Which character would you be? You were all olives.
Oh, I love how
you still like her. Or maybe you're Vivian.
I feel like I needed to know more about, there's so much more to that Olive than we got.
Yeah.
We didn't really get much of her backstory, did we?
None.
Like, how did they meet?
I just know they met before the war or during the war, so it's been a long time.
And like, I wanted to know more about like how Peg and Olive became like a couple.
Especially when that happened. Married to this Billy person. Like
that was just all glazed over.
We don't have answers.
I need answers.
Yeah.
I need answers. But, yeah, I forget what I was going to say.
Tell us what you would rate this book and if you would recommend it to someone.
Yeah, and hopefully this was interesting to watch if you haven't read the book. Maybe we've convinced you. Maybe we've made you steer clear of a 400-page book that you didn't need to waste your time on, but who knows?
Now you know a little bit about it, and hopefully you will be yourself and comfortable with yourself.
Yeah.
Own your mistakes and still love people who make mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. We all make mistakes, so.
Mm-hmm. So we will see you next month, last Saturday of the month, where we'll be talking about City of Brass.
I have it right here. Here we go.
Also a very pretty cover.
Yeah, look at that. It's got it's weird because I actually just started getting into mandala art.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen it's like the dot art. This is probably more of like an Egyptian mandala. I don't really know, but it's so pretty.
Yeah. So we'll be reading that next month, or I've already started.
I need to start, and it's also kind of big, so I'm gonna start today.
No, I may read this one twice by then because I do like it already.
Is it that good? I've heard it's slow at the beginning. Is that? Do you think?
A little bit, but it's also just way more like there's less descriptions.
Okay.
So I can read it faster.
So a complete change of pace. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, very different change of pace.
I just almost dropped it. Okay, well, we'll see everybody next month.
Thanks for watching.
And in the meantime, we try to post a few times a week on our Instagram, Club Book Buzz, at Club Book Buzz.
So follow us and comment, and if you have a recommendation for a book too.
Yes, please. I want to know what people want to read.
Another month.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Christine.
Bye.